Hello friends, and welcome to your President's Day beer review. Well, it's not actually President's Day, it's Valentine's Day and President's Day on the same weekend. It's a 3-day weekend. Get to go to, and the next week I get to go to another island for work. I'm not leaving the airport because the job's at the airport, so wee and hooray. I still have 2 bottles of specialty beer to review. But I've been just on a regular beer kick right now. I kind of want to save those, well, at least one of them for a while. So tonight I'm going to be reviewing another local beer. And this is Maui Brewing Company's Coconut Porter. Now, why am I reviewing this one in particular? Well, I'm just kind of starting to run out of local beers to review. And also because somebody I know on Facebook mentioned it, well, they're being a little bit afraid of trying it. And I said, really, it's actually not that bad. And she was sort of expecting it to be like some sort of really intense coconut bomb. And this beer isn't. This beer is actually very subtle, very subtle, and, not a huge bomb. So one thing, coconut bomb. So one thing about this that I've noticed is you kind of almost have to have it at room temperature, namely 65 degrees or so. I've had this out of the refrigerator for about half an hour already. It's still a little bit on the cold side, but pouring it in the glass should make it about the right temperature. So let's read this, shall we? Coconut Porter is a fresh handcrafted robust porter brewed with 6 varieties of malted barley, hops, and hand-toasted coconut. This is a 6.0 ABV. So, pretty much bog standard porter with the addition of coconut. Poured nice and warm like this is it smells much stronger and it tastes much stronger. You don't want this too cold, otherwise the experience is ruined. It is extremely dark for a porter. Holding it up to the light, all you get is some light brownish red highlights towards the bottom. This is actually darker than many stouts I've seen. Very rich smell. This one is a porter that has much more chocolate notes in the bouquet than coffee. And underneath that is the nice smell of toasted coconut. Now, fresh toasted coconut is not really sweet. It's not really overwhelming. It's this sort of creaminess. Well, it's difficult to explain. Toasted coconut smells and tastes like toasted coconut. Overall, it's a very sweet-smelling porter. Chocolate, coffee, and coconut. It's just a tad overcarbonated for a porter. That's okay. Overcarbonation, if it's mild, is a problem that fixes itself with time. Fairly light-bodied, is not chewy at all, but you don't really expect chewy beers from a Hawaiian brewery. Contrary to the smell, in which sweet milk chocolate was the primary and forefront of the bouquet, on the palate, the primary first taste you get is of dark roast coffee. I would say, well, not dark roast, sort of medium roast coffee, along with that sort of toasted grain, toasted cereal. There's a brief hit of sweetness towards the mid palate, and then you get to the finish, and that's where the coconut sort of shows up, and is very subtle. It is this sort of creaminess on the tongue of the finish, so we're there right now. And the sort of very light odor of coconut that sort of drifts up from the palate and into the nasal cavities. Now this is quite good because the coconut is very understated. The coconut is not the primary note, is not the dominating factor in this beer. It is a pretty well crafted, pretty well standard porter with just a slight flavor twist. In other words, it's basically a malt show. I forgot to mention the color of the head, by the way. It was sort of, like I said, pretty basic porter, light brown color. Fairly thick but fast dissipating, which makes sense considering the lightness of the body, relative to the style, of course. Now, so what is the distinctive aspect that coconut brings to this, since it's not an overwhelming coconut taste, it's just very light? Well, it has a lot to do with the body. This is extremely creamy in regards to the mouthfeel, which is sort of strange considering the lightness of body. You wouldn't expect creaminess with the sort of lightness to the body. In other words, the coconut is not so much flavor aspect, though it's there, and you have to really kind of search for it. It is more there to lend mouthfeel and palate aspects to the beer. It's just a lovely mouthfeel. Creaminess, toastiness. Haven't mentioned hops. Hops generally are not part of the showcase for the style. They really shouldn't be, in my opinion. There's that light floralness that knows that, yes, hops are added. Obviously, the bitterness to beer that tells you that hops are added. But that's just sort of part of the backbone there. You just kind of note that as part of the style, it is not supposed to be distinctive. Excuse me. Now, in conclusion, I'd like to just end my review with a little note. This is how I believe adjuncts should be used in a beer. They should be used to complement a style as opposed to just dominating the style, which is something that happens quite often with pumpkin beers. And I suppose my palate has changed because pumpkin beers are basically what started me on the road to craft beer. But now I'm kind of seeing the drawbacks of it because they basically become all about the adjuncts. Comes all about that pumpkin flavor, all about that cinnamon and nutmeg and allspice, you know, and the rest of the beer, well, sometimes isn't even there. So what you have here with coconut porter is a porter with a Hawaiian twist, namely light bodiness and the addition of coconut to go and complement that light bodiness to give it a very unique twist. So, in conclusion, if you find this and you're a porter drinker, I would highly recommend it. And again, they are now distributing on the West Coast due to their partnership with Stone Brewery. So those of you in California or areas where Stone Brewery is distributed will also be able to find Maui Brewing. So go ahead and try it. They're basically the best local brewery that is currently canning and distributing, as opposed to just sort of being a brew pub. So that's your beer review for tonight, folks. Mahalo and aloha.